Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. We've got a really special guest, Suzy, Soliman, who started this great Facebook group for pharmacist moms. As you know, we have triplet 6-year-old daughters, and there are some things about having multiples that make it a little bit harder to enjoy time with them individually, especially where you might have a kid and you get to spend time with them, and then there's a little brother or little sister time. We didn't have any of that. We had 55 days of hospital bed rest, 11 weeks in the NICU, and then it was off to the races where they couldn't suck, swallow, breathe. So we would feed them for 90 minutes, and then they would sleep for 90 minutes, and we did this round the clock for a couple of weeks. So there are challenges that moms have and that maybe we don't appreciate as much, and I'm really, really excited to have this interview with Suzy Soliman, who did start this group because of frustration that she had, where maybe there was one day that she couldn't spend time with one of her children because work was a challenge at that time. So here we go with the interview with Suzy Soliman of that Pharmacist Moms group. Suzy Soliman is the Chief Academic Officer and Consultant for the Accreditation Council for Medical Affairs, ACMA, who oversees the overall curricular development of the Board Certification Program in Medical Affairs, BCMAS, for the Accreditation Council for Medical Affairs. She's also the author of Are You a Pharmacist and a Mom?, which hit Pharmacy Times November 29th and Pharmacy Week on December 1st. She's founder of the PharmacistMomsGroup.com on Facebook, which has added over 1,000 members just in the last month. So I reached out to her, not only to learn more, but spread the word about this resource. So welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast.
Thank you so much, Tony. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about your leadership road. It sounds like you're actually driving, or you guys don't drive. You take the train into downtown New York every day. Is that the case? Or tell me a little bit about your leadership road and your current position.
Sure. So I'm actually one of the people who does drive and sits in the traffic. So I'm probably more rare. I do not like taking the train in every day. Just, again, that limited me with getting back to my kids and their activities. But a little bit about my background. So prior to moving to New York, I was born and raised in Chicago. And so I was faculty after pharmacy school at a College of Pharmacy out there and an assistant dean at the University of Illinois College of Pharmacy there for a few years. I was also a medical science liaison and a medical science liaison manager. I then moved out to the East Coast and became an associate dean for a short time. I've worked part-time throughout my career as a pharmacist as well, doing retail at independents or also at a couple chains. And most recently, I've acquired this job, and I work for the Accreditation Council for Medical Affairs, where we supply and I regulate and I do all the assessment and the accreditation for a board certification program within medical affairs. So, and my background as a former dean was all in assessment and education. So a lot of my background is education. But basically, as a pharmacist, what I always felt was that we operated in silo and alone, and I felt that sometimes I'd be at work and I didn't have someone else to share my experiences with as once I became a mom. And the main driver that prompted me to start this group was one night I missed my son's baseball game, and I was feeling super bad and because I was at work and it was late and I couldn't make it. And although my husband did go to the game, I still felt terribly guilty. And so I decided that evening everyone was fast asleep at home, and I decided to go onto Facebook, and I was scrolling Facebook, I think just like most other moms do in this day and age when they can't sleep, and I decided to just start this group, and basically it kind of took off from there.
But if I remember reading right, you said you only invited 50 people. Your group is over 3,000 now. What do you think happened between then and now?
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of interesting. I just invited all of my friends from pharmacy school that I graduated with or that I've worked with throughout the years. And it was amazing. I posted that first post was really just about the guilt, and I had so many responses, and then it just blew up. I want to say almost it's a closed group, so you have to be a pharmacist and a mom to join. And every day, I want to say we get between 10 to 50 new requests, which has been amazing. But I think that we're more than just any old Facebook group. We're really a community and a large resource. So we talk about anything from, children and nursing or bottle feeding and graduation. We've had some talk about being sick or being ill and medical leave. And there's just so many different areas, changing careers and what other options, non-traditional pharmacy roles. So there's so many things that we can talk about. And it's just been one person adding another person, adding another person. And I feel that it's kind of a safe network where we think alike, I think, as well as we're all pharmacists in the group. So I think that's also helped where we can kind of bounce ideas off of each other as well.
Well, tell me a little bit about women in leadership. I'd started this podcast as a spinoff from the Pharmacy Podcast Network, and when I brought on Jackie Boyle to talk about women in leadership, that episode blew up. 4 times more downloads than any episode that I had to date. Can you tell me a little bit about the particular challenges that women in leadership have as parents, as pharmacists, and someone told me sometimes pharmacy is just not compatible with being a good family member. Can you tell me a little bit about the challenges maybe you have?
Sure. I think that in general, pharmacy has been touted as one of the best careers for women. And I think I wrote that actually in the article I published, because a lot of us believe that going into pharmacy school, well, you're going to have that balanced life. And I remember interviewing quite a few potential pharmacy students, and they would say that, well, I'm looking for career-life balance, and pharmacy will have that. But what a lot of us have found, and I personally have found, is once you graduate, that's not always the case. Whether you're working a 2 to 10 shift at a clinic, at a hospital, or in at a chain pharmacy, or if you're working in the evenings, or if you have to work weekends every other weekend. So it's really about balance. And so I think that a lot of times women who are looking for leadership roles or looking to, to expand their career or grow in their career have found it quite challenging. It's not just roses at the end of, when you graduate. And I think, though, that women are the leaders of pharmacy. So if you're looking at the number of graduates per year, it's continued to rise. So I think years ago, pharmacy was predominantly a male profession, where now the numbers are over 60% of graduates are now female. So females are the leaders. Females are moving to leadership roles. Females are also the future of pharmacy. So balance is also key to that, whether it's work-life balance or balancing your family life as well with that, and being a mom and being a pharmacist as well.
Well, tell me a little bit about National Women's Pharmacist Day, something that I read in the article also that you guys are trying to put together. What day were you hoping it would be, and then kind of a little bit behind that story?
Sure. So right now we're still deciding on the day, but really when thinking about pharmacists, we have the National Pharmacy Month, which has been great, and we have a Pharmacist Week, and we have World Pharmacist Day. But at this point, we do not have a day that's recognized for female pharmacists or women pharmacists. And the numbers are showing that more and more females are practicing, that more and more females are pharmacists. So we really need to recognize what women have gone through to get there and how they've gotten there. So I think that's really our goal, is to establish a specific date for women in pharmacy. And we've been talking about it as a group. And I think that as the group has gotten to be much larger, we're trying to finalize the date. And we're really looking at a date that would be significant to pharmacists, whether it's the date of the first female pharmacist who was accepted into pharmacy school, or whether it's a date that she graduated from pharmacy school as well. So we're really trying to look at a specific date that would be significant for female pharmacists.
As someone who has 3 daughters, that would be very, very cool. Tell me, since I can't get into the group, what I kind of wanted to maybe go over with you is some of the insights that as a dad or as a spouse or as a partner that maybe we could help with. And I just wanted to go through a couple of things. I had sent you a link about the Four Tendencies from Gretchen Rubin, who's a pretty well-known author. But maybe we could go through some of these things and get kind of the things that maybe I as a dad could do to support my wife, who is in your group, actually. External expectations. I mentioned the Four Tendencies. My wife and I are both obligers. You mentioned you might have been an obliger and then your husband a rebel. Can you tell me a little bit about how the obliger tendency kind of manifests itself as a pharmacy where we put others ahead of our needs?
Yeah, so I think as a pharmacist, being an obliger is great, where you are putting others ahead of your needs and you're taking care of others and you're worried about your patients and how they're doing, and you'll go that extra step to stay late or to help someone. But I think that sometimes in your personal life, that is not always the best case scenario. So, and I think the guilt is really what sets in. I can tell you that probably if I had to guess, and we obviously didn't study the group yet, but I would say that in the Pharmacist Moms group, probably a good 70% of us were obligers. Just looking at the amount of posts that come through about feeling guilty and how are we going to be able to pump and have a patient waiting for a script that they want ready in 2 minutes, and when am I going to find the time to do that? And so there's a lot of questions related to that. But I think a lot of pharmacists are in that role. And they are obligers. Now, my husband is a little bit different. He's a rebel, so I don't know if that's how.
That's the rarest of the groups, according to Gretchen Rubin. So you've got a phenomenal husband then, in that he is like that. But and I'm not trying to. I guess I'm just trying to find a way that as because geeky dads tend to start podcasts. And then that's how we, connect with other people, get off of our island. Well, let's talk about another book. Have you read the book, The Love Languages? That was an important one for my wife and I, because she has acts of service as something that's important to her. So if I do the things that she wanted to get done and they're done before she comes home and she didn't have to ask me, that's a good thing for her. I didn't know if you'd read the 5 love languages. Actually,
I did. And what's funny is when I was an associate dean, we actually gave there's different languages also in a work environment as well. So, but in terms of the love languages, I did do that one. So my husband was the one who, he is the act of service. And I'm the quality time, let's sit down, let's hang out together, let's spend time together. So that one is quite interesting as well. But it's interesting because everyone responds differently. So for some people, they don't mind for example, physical touch. You don't have to touch me. It doesn't matter. Where other people, when you come home, I expect a hug and a kiss. And so it's quite interesting just to see the differences amongst everybody. And what's been interesting in the group, I would say, is that we have talked actually about the love languages as well. And you can even use them with patients. So you could talk about what might work for your patient in terms of talking to them. And some people prefer just even like cultural competencies and, touch. Some people want to be touched and some people don't. And some people want a very formal relationship. So we kind of took it the other way too, to relate it to some of our patient experiences as well.
Okay, well, let's shift a little bit to time management. My wife is the person who has the 9 to 5, and I wish it were 9 to 5, but actually she leaves the house at 7:10 and comes back around 5 o'clock. And something that we implemented was that she would make lunches in the morning and hurry, but I told her, well, you can just leave it. And it's really tough for her to leave it. But she found that now she has a little bit more time in the morning. But talking to me about those things was really helpful. What time management tips have you gotten out of the group?
So I think the best advice that we've given to each other is that to really take care of yourself and to voice your concerns as well. So really not to just sit still and let everything kind of pass. So in terms of time management, making lists, prioritizing, and really prioritizing. Because I think as a parent, what do you prioritize? And you brought up the point about lunches and making them earlier. And people are talking about, well, dinner, and I come home and it's late. So we've talked about prioritizing, in terms of what needs to get done and what doesn't need to get done. And I know a lot of the moms have discussed, whether it's hiring help and getting help from outside sources or family help that you can also ask outside members or your spouse, or, whether it's grandma to help pick up. So there's a lot of things that we can do, but time management is a big one, I think, because a lot of pharmacists do not work the typical 9 to 5. And like you mentioned, even if you do, you have the commute time set in as well, or you're working weekends and you're working every other weekend. So it's really about trying to figure that out. And there have also been a couple of pharmacist moms who are married to pharmacists as well, and who all are working the same weekend. So then what do they do on those weekends where they're both working and they have a sick child? So we've talked about a lot of those. And I think the biggest thing is really prioritizing and trying to figure out what you have to get done and what you can push off for later. And I think that a lot of us struggle with that. But if you can figure that part out, then, the rest will all fall into place.
What about, and time management and task management are similar, but if my wife emails me, it's much more likely to get done because it'll be in my email and rather than saying it to me. Have you guys talked about kind of how you help work with spouses or partners and what best practices you can have in terms of communication, really? Communicating what is a priority to them. And I hate to use the word chief complaint, but every morning I'll ask my wife, what is the most important thing you want done today? Because I could get 10 things done, and then I'm physical from the love languages. I won't get my hug if I didn't get that one thing that she really wanted done. So how do you articulate and communicate your priorities to a spouse or partner?
Are you reading our post?
I'm not allowed. I was really upset. I was like, come on, you can let me. And she's like, no.
That's so funny, because that was actually a post probably this month, just a couple of weeks ago, that someone was asking what is the best mommy planner to just balance your pharmacy life and family activities and things like that. I think the majority of people felt Google Calendar. A lot of people were just on Gmail, and they recommended just, a calendar invite to your spouse, do X, Y, and Z, or to whoever is helping you with your children. So I do think that has been a big question, and I think that does help. Just managing the day to day. So what we need to get done for today, whether it's buy 3 new pairs of pants for this kid, or take the dog here, and I'm just putting that into your work calendar. Sometimes does help as well, and that came up. The other thing that we talk about is financial planners. So it's kind of interesting that they're bringing up the planners. So putting both of those in there.
Tell me a little bit about, I guess, so I didn't know I did this, but when I came home, I looked mad. And I wasn't mad. I was just upset with something that happened that day. But she thought I was mad at her. And then sometimes she would be mad because something had happened to her that day. And so now we have this kind of smile. It's almost like an emoji smile, like, I'm fine, I'm fine, okay, good, we're fine. This was from my students. They gave me the trouble tree, where you leave your troubles at the trouble tree before you come inside. What tips have you had to kind of leave the work problems at work, instead of, especially with pharmacist couple? I remember so many times she'd come home, fine, I'll never tell you about my day again. And then sure enough, she told me the next night about her day.
Yeah.
But how do you kind of keep the work problems at work and just not let that poison kind of what's going on with the family the few hours you get before you get to, bedtime and things like that?
Exactly. I mean, that's a great question. I think for every couple, it's probably a little different. I can speak to my own relationship, and what we've done and what works for us is we actually set aside specific time where we are not allowed to talk about work. So, there's specific hours, I would say, in the evening where no one can talk about work, no one can be on their phones. Even the kids, they can't touch their phones either. So we have set aside specific time, because I think without that, at least for us, it just doesn't work, because somebody's going to bring it up. My husband's either going to bring up what happened at him, or if he was at a meeting and traveling, and or I'm going to bring up what's going on at work as well. So, I think that just happens. And what ends up happening is our kids, as they get older, they begin to just repeat, oh, Mom, how was that meeting, or what happened, with this launch, and did everything go okay? And so what I found was, oh my gosh, I'm just talking about work all the time. I have to stop. And that actually helped me too, was when my kids started talking about my job and they knew acronyms, I was like, okay, I got to stop talking about work so much. I'm like, they shouldn't know all these acronyms at this point. So,
yeah, my kids do that too, and they're 6, and you would think that they don't pick up on it, but they certainly do.
They do,
and they don't let go. They don't ever let go. Let's talk about what I've heard is kind of the 50-50 fiction where, okay, I'll drop them off, you pick them up. And we had this, and I was talking to my wife, she's got her own entrepreneurial thing, and it came out that she said, well, I'm doing this entrepreneurial thing for me time, so I can connect with other people. And can you explain to guys what me time is? Because we don't actually use that term, and but we take it all the time as she explained it to me. She's like, when you go to the bar and then you just hang out with your buddy for a 3-hour game, that's me time. Or that's you time. So can you explain, how would you explain that to a guy? What is me time? Because I went on Google and I read that the average mom gets 14 minutes a day.
Yeah, well, that's a lot, I would even say. Me time is a necessity. I think that, the problem is a lot of women don't take the time to do it, I think. And even as pharmacists, I would say that a lot of pharmacists probably don't do it as well, just because we're often helping others and trying to put others' needs over our own. But finding time for me time is critical. I can speak to myself that prior to finding my own me time, for me time was whether it was either surfing the net as part of my me time, or actually now it's been working out and doing a specific exercise. I go to the bar, and just finding that time for yourself, it really gives you, I don't know, for some reason you have a lot more energy when it comes to your spouse and your children after this me time. But I would say it is a necessity, and I would encourage, more moms to take advantage of it. Although I know it is hard for some people to actually have that time. It's funny that your wife uses her entrepreneurial skills for her me time, because it's kind of similar to a lot of women. I think we still are trying to make good use of our time. So you still don't even want to completely relax at any point. So, but we do need the me time, and it's a necessity for women. I think just juggling so many things: careers, family, kids, community, or your spouse, things like that. So, we need to have balance.
Yeah, it was a Thursday night. I came downstairs and she was watching Scandal, so I know to leave. Because that's her time. But then she was ignoring Scandal to talk with her mentor who is helping her with the entrepreneurial venture. So it was like, oh my gosh, she's ignoring Scandal. There's no way I have a chance. So it's just time to go. Michelle Obama at ASHP talked a little bit about putting your things in the calendar first. What is it that allows you to be so successful as a mom in your career? What do you do just day to day? Are you a list person? What tips do you personally have?
So I'm definitely a list person. That helps me maintain what I need to do. I think what's really helped me recently is you brought up Michelle Obama. I actually am a really big fan of hers. I'm also a really big fan of Oprah Winfrey, and she has a Super Soul Sunday. I'm not sure if you've ever listened to any of the shows, but those really help calm me and help me with balance and bringing balance to my life. So I try to listen to those each day, just a small, even if it's just a couple minutes for myself, and just to get some type of enlightening word, and then be able to go on with my day. And then I go on and I make my lists, and I try to become very efficient. And I know basically I have my time, whether it's at work or I'm, the kids are at school, and I need to get everything done, because once 3:30, 4, 5, 6 o'clock, whenever I get home to see the kids, I know at that point I really just want to devote my time to my family. So I'm trying to learn to finish everything, early on in the day, so that I have the time, as much time as I can with my kids. Because as you know, and I know, every day, when they're young, you're like, oh my gosh, are they going to grow up? And then as they start to get older, they're not with you forever. So I'm trying to be in the moment and live in the moment, and not worrying about being perfect, and really just being present. There is a book called Present Over Perfect, and I think that also has helped me as well.
Yeah, I'm absolutely bottling these moments when I've got 3 6-year-olds instead of 3 16-year-olds. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes.
I'm sure.
But tell me a little bit about what might be the best career advice you've ever been given or that you would give. It's a little bit challenging now getting into the pharmacy jobs. Some of the floater physicians or PRN positions are the first ones out there, and some aren't compatible necessarily with being a parent. What advice do you have to the new graduates that are coming out here in May?
I would say that pharmacy is an amazing profession. I know that so many people are sad because it's a lot more difficult than years ago when you were able to just graduate and just get a job anywhere you wanted. And it's a lot more competitive. But I think pharmacy there's still so much to it. It's such a great field. There are so many options. It's one of those fields where you can have your PharmD degree and you do not have to just look for a job at a pharmacy and work at a retail or an independent pharmacy and community pharmacy. That there are so many options out there. And I think I would encourage everyone to just explore those different options. And I never thought I would be in the role that I was in today. In fact, my role didn't even exist 10 years ago. So you kind of pave your way and carve out your way. So even in my current role, when I was working in pharma, years ago, they did not have an assessment. They didn't have a board certification. And now look, so a lot of things eventually evolve and they happen. And I think pharmacy is such a great career. And there's so many opportunities and you're able to switch. I mean, just in my short time since I graduated, I've done so many things and it's been so great. So I think that people just really have to look and see what's going to work for them and really believe in yourself that you don't necessarily just have to do this one thing. There are so many opportunities out there.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your college? You went to one of the better ones. And tell us a little bit about what it was about that pharmacy school experience that kind of let you become so entrepreneurial, so flexible, and you've really moved really fast up the leadership ladder.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I think, University of Illinois is an excellent school. I would say that it was probably the faculty. I had excellent mentors. I would say that, I can bring up Dr. Marika Shane. She was one of my mentors and she still is. And I just seeing some of the leaders throughout University of Illinois and what they've done and the landscape and the changes that they've done. And even our current dean who is retiring, Dean Bauman, such a leader in pharmacy and really understanding that pharmacists can make a difference and we can pave our own way and that it's not scripted. So I think really believing again in yourself. And I can't thank my faculty or anyone who trained me or along the way, even throughout my residency and any of my training over even at Midwestern University as well. There's so many people really who taught me about publicizing things and, publications and getting the word out there and that you don't really have to, pharmacy isn't a mold. And I think that that's really what I learned. It's that you don't have to just do the same thing and, you find your way.
And then the last question, what inspires you?
What inspires me? That's a good one. My children, I would say, my husband, my family. I would say that they inspire me every day to do better. Whether it's my sons or really, my daughter, just knowing that she's going to one day grow up and also be a woman and and hopefully a leader in her field and. Letting her know that whatever she wants to do and all of my children, letting them know whatever they want to do, that, that it is possible, that they can figure out their way and find a way.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast.
Thanks so much.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.